The neon vacancy sign flickered like a dying heartbeat as Daniel pulled into the lot. The roadside motel stood alone under the dark Wyoming sky, its pale yellow paint faded by years of neglect. His headlights swept over a cracked asphalt lot, empty except for his own car. Daniel had been driving for hours. The last town was miles behind him, and exhaustion weighed heavy on his shoulders. He needed a bed, just a few hours of sleep before getting back on the road. The Desert Rose Motel would do. Inside the lobby, the air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and old wood polish. A bell sat on the counter, tarnished from years of use. Daniel pressed it. A moment later, an old man shuffled in from the back office. He was tall and gaunt, with deep wrinkles carved into his face, like a man who had spent too many years watching the highway. "Room for the night?" Daniel asked, fishing his wallet from his jacket. The old man nodded, his expression unreadable. "Cash only," he said, his voice dry as dust. Daniel sighed, but handed over a couple of bills. "Is it just you running the place?" he asked, making small talk as the man slid an old-fashioned metal key across the counter. The clerk nodded. "Ain't got many guests these days. You'll be the only one tonight." Something about the way he said it made Daniel pause. The lobby was eerily silent. No television humming in the background. No distant sounds of guests shifting in their rooms. Just the ticking of a clock above the counter. "All right," Daniel muttered, taking the key. "Which room?" "7, the clerk said, his sunken eyes meeting Daniel's. "Last one on the right. Get some rest." Daniel grabbed his bag and stepped out into the cold night air. The wind whispered against the eaves of the building, and the surrounding landscape was nothing but open desert stretching into darkness. The rooms lined up in a single row, their doors painted a peeling shade of red. Room 7 was exactly where the old man said, last one on the right. Inside, the room was small but clean. A bed with a faded floral comforter sat against the wall. A rickety nightstand held a single lamp. The air smelled faintly of mildew. Daniel locked the door and dropped onto the bed with a sigh. He set his phone on the nightstand. No signal, of course. Typical. But he didn't need the outside world tonight. He just needed sleep. The silence of the motel was unsettling. He was used to hearing a distant murmur of other travelers, the occasional footsteps in the hall. Here there was nothing. No televisions, no voices, no sounds at all. It was the emptiest place he had ever been. Still, exhaustion won. He barely managed to kick off his boots before he drifted into sleep. Sometime in the middle of the night, Daniel woke with a start, a sound, a knock at the door. 3 slow, deliberate raps. He sat up, his pulse hammering. The room was dark except for the dim glow of the neon sign outside, casting shifting red light through the thin curtains. He checked the time on his phone. 2:13 a.m. Another knock. He held his breath, listening. Maybe it was the clerk. Maybe something was wrong. He climbed out of bed, heart pounding, and moved to the door. He pressed his eye to the peephole. Nothing. The narrow view of the motel lot was empty. No figure, no movement. "Hello?" he called, his voice hoarse from sleep. Silence. He reached for the lock but hesitated. His gut told him not to open the door. Instead, he backed away, waiting. Several minutes passed. No more knocking, no footsteps, nothing. With a deep breath, Daniel shook his head and climbed back into bed. The old man said I was the only guest. Maybe he was just checking on me. Still, he kept the lamp on and lay awake, listening. At some point, sleep claimed him again. Morning came, gray and cold. Daniel woke groggy, his mind still fogged from the uneasy night. As he dressed, he hesitated before opening the door. A strange part of him expected something to be out there, footprints, a note, something. But the motel lot was just as empty as before. Frowning, he stepped outside. The clerk was nowhere in sight. Daniel made his way to the lobby. The door was unlocked, the bell above it jingling as he stepped in. The counter was empty. Behind it, the office door was slightly ajar. "Hello?" Daniel called. No answer. Curiosity gnawed at him. He stepped around the counter and peered inside the office. What he saw made his stomach turn. A chair sat in the center of the room, knocked over. A pile of dust-covered newspapers littered the desk. The headlines jumped out at him. Motel clerk found dead in his office. 1993. Local motel shutters after owner's passing. Desert Rose Motel remains abandoned, years of decay. Daniel backed away, his pulse hammering. Abandoned? But that wasn't possible. He had spoken to the old man. He had paid him for the room. A flicker of movement in the reflection of the office window made him spin around. The clerk was standing in the lobby watching him. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. "You shouldn't be in there," the old man said, his voice unnervingly calm. Daniel swallowed hard. I saw something in the papers. This place, it closed years ago?" The old man tilted his head. "That's so?" The air in the room suddenly felt heavy, suffocating. Daniel's instincts screamed at him to leave. "I think I'll be going now," he muttered, edging toward the door. The old man didn't move, just watched. Daniel bolted. He ran to his car, yanking the door open, fumbling with the keys. His hands were shaking as he jammed the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, and he threw the car into reverse, kicking up dust as he sped toward the highway. As he glanced in the rearview mirror, his blood ran cold. The motel was gone. Nothing but desert remained. The neon vacancy sign, the row of rooms, even the office, it had vanished, like it had never even been there at all. Daniel drove for miles, the sun rising behind him, but his hands remained tight on the wheel, knuckles white. When he finally reached a gas station hours later, he pulled in and stepped inside. The clerk, a woman in her 50s, looked up from the counter. "You all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." Daniel let out a breathless chuckle. "I think I have." She frowned. "Where are you coming from?" "The Desert Rose Motel," he said before he could stop himself. The woman's face went pale. "Honey, that place burned down over 30 years ago." Daniel didn't respond. He just turned and walked back to his car, the chill of the night still clinging to his skin. Thanks for joining us on The Open Road, where anything can happen and there's always another adventure right around the corner. Remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on The Open Road.